Independent Senator Cory Bernardi, who's speaking to us live from Parliament House. Thanks for joining us, Cory. Your former Liberal leader there, former Defence Minister Brendan Nelson, he's done a fantastic job, hasn't he, at the War Memorial? His term finishing up in coming weeks, but he's done a great job for that institution and for rekindling a lot of interest and memory and I suppose fondness for the memories of great sacrifice in this country.
Chris, you're right. Brendan Nelson's an extraordinary man. He was a wonderful person to be a colleague with in the Parliament. Cruelly cut down, I think, by some other forces, but he's certainly risen to much higher status in the community. What he's done with the War Memorial has been extraordinary. He has upheld it. He's reaffirmed it, I think, as perhaps one of the most reverent places in the country, and he'll be sadly missed when he goes.
Yes, indeed. A good word, that reverence. I should allow that's the appropriate word, rather than fondness for the people who made those sacrifices. Reverence. Now, on to contemporary issues, Cory Bernardi, and I want to get your thoughts on the way we've seen Greens MPs and Labor MPs, but particularly Greens MPs, out there trying to make climate policy points on the back of deadly bushfires that we have always faced in this country and always will.
Chris, in short, it's disgusting. These people thrive on human misery. They seem to be energised by it, and politically they see it as an opportunity. I think it's disgusting, and they never miss a chance to do it. But if you want to really drill into why bushfires are more catastrophic perhaps now than they have been previously, it's because in many instances you're not allowed to tend to open forest, or you're not allowed to tend to national parks, or you're not allowed to clear land. Even if we go back to the Aboriginal inhabitants of this land, they used to have clearing fires regularly to ensure that there was no catastrophic bushfire that took place. It's about husbandry and about looking after the land. The Greens don't want us to do that, and unfortunately they seem to profit from their own terrible, terrible policies.
There is no doubt that fuel load management, whether it be backburning or other measures, is crucial, especially as so many people look for a tree change and build houses on the top of ridge lines, and there probably are, often are, not probably, there often are council guidelines, Green politicians and others at the local government level that either enable or ensure that bushland can come right up to these residential areas and residential dwellings. It's just not safe.
No, it's not sane, and we've got to balance human need with the requirements for the environment. But the Greens seem to have this special ability to wish catastrophe upon all of humankind, and then they thrive on it. They grow, they engorge themselves upon human misery and suffering, and I think it's disgusting what Adam Bandt and his ilk have done today, but why are we surprised? They've done it before, they'll continue to do it until we call them out and say enough's enough, we're not putting up with it anymore.
Well, but this is the problem, right? How do we get them to stop it? How do we just have to put up with this forever and a day? Now, of course, in this country of droughts and flooding rains, this country where we've always had bushfires, cyclones, floods, droughts, we've all had to deal with the human misery that comes out of them. But now, over the last decade, I suppose, every time there's a cyclone or a flood or a drought or a fire, we have these Greens activists and Greens politicians coming out and saying that we told you so, saying that there's a political point to be made. I mean, the corollary is, obviously the question as I opened the program on, are they actually saying that they have policies that can stop all this? It's absurd.
You're right, it is absurd. I mean, if in the Greens world we stopped emitting carbon dioxide 10 years ago, would we not have floods or bushfires anymore? These people, these are freaks, and they've been normalised, and they've been normalised by sections of the media, including the ABC, who really just want to dish up a whole diet of green extremism and say that's what we've got to go down for. We've had too many politicians that have succumbed to it and indulged in it because they think maybe we'll get criticised if we stand up to this nonsense. They parade around with their 11,000 scientists saying, climate change is a catastrophe, ignoring the fact that Mickey Mouse is on it and, Professor Dumbledore and all of these sorts of things. We are dealing in a mind-numbingly stupid time in politics when people like this are running the show.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's what offends me most about it, is just the absolute stupidity. It insults the intelligence of every Australian every time they get out there and mouth this. And you're right, the ABC in particular, a lot of other journalists, but the ABC in particular, just amplify this nonsense daily. Now, Cory Bernardi, I believe you turned 50 last week. Congratulations. Did you have a bit of a party?
Does it show? Does it show already, mate? You know, I'm aged. I had a small lunch with my family, and my mum and dad turned up and they gave me all my old report cards, which I tell you what was a walk down memory lane.
Oh, it would have been a ripper. Yeah, I think I met your dad over a beer in Adelaide, I don't know, 20 years ago. So it would have been a raucous occasion, no doubt. Now, tell me, you must be ready then to resign from the Senate. You said you're going to turn 50 and move on. You flagged it earlier this year. When is that resignation letter going in?
Chris, I think you can be confident it'll happen in 2020. At the moment, there's still some things I really want to stick up for and fight against. The fight against socialism is still not done. I mean, today we're going to be debating in the Senate the government setting a floor price on milk. Now, if it's a good idea for milk, why can't we set a floor price for everything else? And the reason is because that's socialism and it doesn't work. I've still got a bit of fire in the belly yet, and so it'll be in 2020.
I'll come back to some of those issues in a moment, including the dairy industry, but we have confirmed from Georgina Downer that she's leaving South Australia, so therefore she's not in the running to replace you in the Senate. The Liberal Party gets to replace you because you were elected as a Liberal before resigning and becoming an independent. So the field is open to replace you. Will you have any say in that? Will you time your departure to try and make sure that someone you approve of replaces you from the Liberal Party?
Unfortunately, approval of my successor is not within my purview. The Liberal Party doesn't consult me on these things anymore.
Oh, come on. In reality, you'd have plenty of friends on the Conservative side of the Liberal Party, and they'll be letting you know what's going on and perhaps asking you to hold off while they get someone sorted, or go now because they've got the right candidate in place.
No, I don't know about that, Chris, but what I do know is there are a number of very credible people that could fulfil the role. It's a serious role. You know, we're all temporary that occupy it, but it is a really serious role and it can change the country. And I want someone who's going to uphold the traditional values of the Liberal Party. And I think they're going back to that idea too. There's been an experiment the last few years in politics. It hasn't worked out well, and I think the government's back on the right track. The Liberal Party recognises where its strengths lie, and it's finally taking on some of the false prophets that have tried to change it over the years.
Do you think you might rejoin the Liberal Party even after leaving Parliament?
I haven't thought about it, but the short answer is probably not. My sympathies are with them. I do like mainstream Conservative politics, but ultimately, party politics is not that interesting to me anymore. I'm really interested in the principle and the values. So I'll speak up for them if I'm given a platform or a policy agenda, but I don't want to wade into the battle of State Council and reopening a few old wounds.
Now, given those values, though, you must be rapt that Jim Molan's going back into the Senate from New South Wales.
Yeah, I am actually. I'm delighted. Jim was a very amiable bloke here, and I liked him enormously. I think he's got a huge amount to contribute. And look, quite frankly, I should be unhappy with him because he took so many of our votes, or the Australian Conservatives' potential votes. But he's such a decent bloke, and I think they've made a really wise choice to put him in here. And I only hope he lasts more than the 2 years he said he's going to stay.
OK, now some of these issues you're confronting in the Senate this week. You mentioned the dairy plan and a floor price. This is what's being proposed by Pauline Hanson. The Labor Party have helped her get some time in the Senate to put this up. You don't think some Nationals and others on the crossbenches might be of a mind to support her?
Oh, they might be of a mind to do it, but you've got to apply first principles to this. Why should the government pay people to deregulate their industry and then set a floor price? I mean, why not set a floor price on everything? Set a floor price on every struggling business that comes along, on strawberry growers or beer manufacturers or anything else. It's kind of nonsensical. It hasn't worked anywhere else in the world, and I don't know why they think it's a conservative outlook. The simple fact that the Greens and the Labor Party are supporting it suggests that it's just old-fashioned socialism cloaked in a one nation garb.
Indeed. And what about Medivac laws? Do you think, especially given some of the facts, the revelations of the past month or so, surely that's going to swing the Senate to get rid of these laws? They are being gamed in exactly the way that it was expected they'd be gamed.
Yeah, they were warned, and Labor and the Greens and Darren Hinch and co all fell for the three-card Monty. But it's going to come down to Jackie Lambie, from what I understand, and Jackie is being very reasonable. I've had a number of conversations with her about, what she's hoping to achieve and with the government. So I'm optimistic she might be sympathetic to repealing the Medivac laws, but ultimately it's going to come down to her, from what I can ascertain.
All right, thanks for joining us, Corey. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome, Chris. Thanks.
Senator Corey Bernardi there, the independent senator from South Australia. As you heard there, he'll be leaving politics sometime next year. He does seem to have a bit of an interest in just exactly who's going to replace him from the Liberal Party in South Australia, doesn't he? Sounds like he's turning his mind to that just a little.